Good morning or good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Audit-Ready with GenAI, turn trusted data and smart prompts into FDA-ready proof. I am Georgia Briseño, and I'll be your facilitator for today. So to begin with a little bit of what we're going to cover today, the focus of today's webinar is going to be basically divided into two presentations. So the first part is going to be about the audit readiness challenge that we've seen many people are facing right now. So we're gonna have Giannis give us a brief idea of the gaps and the challenges that people who are responsible for being audit ready are facing, and that causes many food facilities to fall short in inspections, basically. We're going to move to how exactly we turn risk data into audit evidence. So we're going to see some parts of FOODAKAI, our platform, in action, and how GenAI as well generates compliant reports for supply verification, hazard analysis, and food fraud prevention. And then with the help of Professor John, we're going to move forward to the responsible use of GenAI in food safety. We're going to explore the three masters approach. We're going to see later on how we master the tool, the data, and the field to ensure accuracy and human oversight. And then we're going to close it up with the compliance confidence. And we're going to learn a little bit more about practical ways to embed AI-supported documentation and monitoring into everyday QA operations. So the session will run for about 45 minutes. We have our two speakers, as we already mentioned. We're going to have two short polls for you to give us a brief idea of some things that we're going to show. And then we're going to have a live Q&A at the end. However, you can fill in your questions right from this moment. You can type them in the Q&A chat over here, and we're going to answer everything that we can in the end. So the session is also being recorded, and we'll also send everything plus the prompt pack and templates that we promised at the registration after the webinar in the next following days. So now I would like to also introduce our speakers for today officially. So first we have Professor John Spink from Michigan State University, a globally recognized expert on food fraud prevention, regulatory compliance, and responsible use of emerging technologies in food safety. And we also have Dr. Giannis Stoitsis, CTO of Agroknow and partner, who leads the development of FOODAKAI's AI-driven food safety intelligence platform and helps global manufacturers digitize their audit and compliance processes. So they're going to explore how GenAI and real-time data are reshaping how FSQA teams actually stay audit ready. So welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being here. And before we get started, I think we could have a word of what do you expect from this webinar. So, Professor John, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I have to say, it's like just a blink of the eye. It was July when we were last together talking about this topic. It seems like that was about last week. So things are moving really, really quickly. We have great opportunities with this, great risks out there, but really I see so many opportunities to really automate what we do. And if we're responsible with it, if we understand the tools we've got, we understand the data sets we have, then I see my productivity is just going exponentially up. And so I'm excited to talk to talk with you and to learn from all of you about this topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Giannis?
Thank you so much for the intro, and I'm very happy to be here together with Professor Spink. We have been discussing this kind of topics for some time now, but now I think that the timing is very good to open and to explore further how the trusted data, how the AI technology and the domain expertise can all work together and facilitate very important processes like the one that have to do with compliance. So I'm very excited to be here today. I would say that my main expectation is to hear more from Professor Spink about the three masters approach. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. So before we get started, I was thinking we could have an opening poll. However, I see that some people are still joining, so I think it would make more sense to make it a little bit later on, maybe after the first presentation, and then the second one towards the end. So, Giannis, I guess the floor is yours, and we can dive in a little bit better on the main challenges, I would say, first, when it comes to audit readiness.
Yeah, so our vision is how we can help the food manufacturers to be audit ready at any point, to have available all the data, but also the tools that can help them to be well prepared for the audit and for the inspections that they are having in order to operate. So before starting and sharing some of the specific challenges, some of the specific use cases, I wanted very much to share with you some statistics about the failures of FDA food facility inspections. So we are talking during the last months, we are talking with some of the food manufacturers that we are working with about the compliance and specifically about how they get ready for audits. What we have realized is that despite years of FDA FISMA implementation, we still see that more than 50% of the inspections still result in non-compliance findings. The main gaps remain the same. It's the foreign supplier verification, it's the hazards analysis, the food defense plan, the preventive measures, and we see these are real data that we are sharing here from the data about inspections, FDA inspections that we are collecting in FOODAKAI. These data are for the last 10 years, and we see that, for instance, the failures in developing the FSVP is very large, is significant. And the same is also for developing a hazard analysis and the corresponding report, also the food safety plan. So we want very much to see how we can help the food manufacturers to be more successful in the inspections, to avoid this kind of failures that they can delay a lot of they can create delays in their work. They require a lot of efforts to be spent in order to be well prepared, or in order to revisit all the documentation and the materials that need to be prepared for the audits. So we want to help them to make this process, to automate part of this process, to make this process more efficient. So if we go to the next slide, discussing more about the audit use cases, about the audit requirements, we see that the auditors expect for the supplier verification, they expect supplier approvals with evidence. For the hazards analysis, they expect a very good analysis of all the potential food safety hazards, the classification of these hazards, and also the definition of the preventive controls following all the recommendations by the FISMA and also by HACCP. The same stands for the risk assessment and prioritization. The companies, based on the requirements from the GFSI certificates, but also from the regulations like FISMA, they need to perform all the risk ranking and the prioritization for all the materials that they are using in each facility. So this requires a lot of work, and also define corrective measures, preventive measures, define all the hotspots and control points and critical control points in the specific in the supply chain. And the same is also for the fraud and vulnerability assessment. There is a lot of work that they need to do in order to prepare all the documentation that is expected by the auditors. So what they are doing, further analyzing the audit focus area, we have selected and we have identified 4 areas. The one has to do with the supplier risk evaluation and monitoring, and there the key evidence that the auditors expect is a supplier dossier report that summarizes all the information for the supplier. I will focus and provide more details about that in the next slides. This is according to FSMA, USDA, but also GFSI requirements. The second area that we will analyze today is the hazard identification and analysis. The key evidence that is expected there is the hazard analysis report. For the risk assessment and the prioritization, the main deliverable, the main evidence is the risk assessment matrix report. So I will also cover that in the next slides. And then in the area of food fraud and adulteration and the vulnerability assessment, which is part of Food Defense Plan, the corresponding report with all the vulnerabilities, with risk, with the likelihood of the detection and the likelihood of occurrence of this of adulterants in the foods that are used in a facility. All these need to be prepared according to specific requirements that are part of FSMA, but also of GFSI certificates like IFS, BRC, SQF, FSCC. So I will show you some of the work that we are doing now with our clients for these 4 main areas. These are the use cases that we are implementing together with our clients. So I will start with the first use case, which is about supplier risk evaluation and monitoring. I already mentioned that the evidence that the auditors expect and they ask when they audit a company is to see data about supplier performance, about recalls, audit results, violations that have been reported for the specific supplier. They also expect to see that the manufacturer has a continuous risk monitoring process in place for the supplier, and that there is a report, a dossier report that summarizes and consolidates all the information that they have for its supplier. So when it comes to the question, yes, but this is a lot of data for all my suppliers that I'm using in the facility, how I can automate this process. The main components, if we go to the next slide, the main components for automated supplier dossier generation are these 4 that we have here. So first of all is the trusted data that we can use from sources like, for instance, the FOODAKAI risk data for non-compliances of your supplier. Trusted data that the company has, the internal data that the company has about the audit results, certificates, complaints, claims that they have for this specific supplier. They can use a template, a very good template based on the best practices. They can use a template for the supplier dossier. And based on that, they can create the report, the dossier report. And of course, we can use GenAI technology. We can use smart prompting, provide all the details that are needed to the large language model in order to generate the supplier dossier that consolidates all this data. So how does this look like? So if we go to the next slide, starting from the prompt that we can write, in the prompt, we want to define, first of all, the context, which is the first part, what I want to achieve, which is the context, what I want to include in such a supplier dossier report. And then a very important part is this one here, which is about defining the data sources. So which different data sources should be used to get information and consolidate this information in a supplier report, and also to give some specific guidelines on the style, on the tabular, textual format that we want to be included. We have done this exercise together with our clients using data from FOODAKAI, internal data that they have, and such prompts. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that we have created reports, supplier dossier reports, which includes all the sessions that such a report needs to include based on the good practices, the best practices of the industry. It includes, as you can see in the tables, it includes specific data for the risk based on the non-compliances that we have identified in FOODAKAI, but also based on data that the company has for the specific supplier. So in this way, without spending too much time of collecting this information, mapping this information, the GenAI here, the GenAI technology and the large language models can help us to consolidate this information in a dossier like this one. So this is about the first use case. If we go to the second use case, which is about identifying the hazards, all the potential hazards, and analyzing the hazards, what the auditors expect here specifically is documented hazard analysis for each product, material, and supplier, evidence that there are hazard updates based on new incidents data that are reported by the food safety authorities, but also globally by different sources. The justification when hazards are not reasonable. And of course, again, here the output is a hazard analysis report that is listing all the identified hazards and provides all the rationale for the preventive controls. So again, how such a report can be created before using trusted data and very, very detailed and good high quality data for all the potential hazards. It was extremely difficult to go and perform all this study to check which are the potential hazards, different documents, risk assessment reports should be studied. So it's a lot of time that the experts need to devote to identify all the hazards for the materials that they have in a specific facility. With FOODAKAI, it's very easy to define which are the materials that we use, which are the ingredients that we use in a facility. And for these materials and ingredients, we can perform the hazard analysis that can be exported in data, in a spreadsheet or in CSV file. So it can be used by any GenAI tool. Either this is an internal copilot that a company has, or it is a more generic AI tool. So in this analysis, we always recommend, and we discuss this a lot with our with the companies that we are working with our clients, that it's a very good practice to also use additional sources like the Appendix 1 for hazard analysis of FDA, to make sure that we include all the potential hazards because these kind of documents are not static. They are also updated from time to time. So it's important to include new issues. But of course, the most fresh data will come from a live risk monitoring and horizon scanning approach, like the one that we have with FOODAKAI. So, for instance, the peanuts in garlic powder, the peanuts issue, peanuts adulterated garlic powder, is something new that may appear and may be identified only with such a horizon scanning approach, whereas these kind of documents will not report this kind of potential issues, which are very serious for the supply chain. So using the input in this case is the data from FOODAKAI, but also some key documents for the hazard analysis. And then again, we need a very good prompt that we can see in the next slide that provides the context, it provides the requirements, it can also make a reference to a specific template, the best practice, the good practice, and then we can provide also the guidelines for the textile and for the presentation of the report. And by giving this prompt, by creating this prompt in a GenAI tool or in an internal copilot that the company has, we can create the report that we can see in the next slide, which provides a comprehensive analysis of all the potential hazards, and it also provides the references, like you can see in the case of olive oil, there's both the reference to hazards that were identified with the help of FOODAKAI as a data source, but also from the FDA document from the Appendix 1 for all the potential hazards that have been provided by the FDA. So again, here, a lot of time can be saved. A very good report can be created. Of course, you need to refine. Sometimes you need to refine and rewrite some part of the prompt, or you need to repeat and insist of getting the results that you really need to make sure that you have that all the data are included. So there are some cycles that we need to do to have the perfect result, but we all understand that the time that we can gain is a lot. So this is very important. For the two next use cases, I will describe them more briefly. I will not get too much into the details of the prompt because the approach is very similar, so you can understand how does this work. So for the case of risk assessment and prioritization, here what is expected is to provide, to create a risk ranking per hazards, taking into consideration the severity and the likelihood. We need to provide an evidence of reanalysis or periodic review every quarter, every year or twice per year, ideally more frequently in order to identify emerging risks. And then we need to create a risk assessment matrix report demonstrating how the risk levels are quantified and prioritized. So again, here, what we need is a trusted data, very good input, and we can get the live risk. If we go to the next slide, we can see how from FOODAKAI we can run, first of all, the risk ranking for all the materials of a facility. We can see how each material is classified in terms of risk. We can have this risk heat map. Here we can have the risk ranking, and all this data, the risk scores, the risk ranking, the risk level can be exported. If we go to the next slide, can be exported in a spreadsheet, and this information then can be the input for the GenAI, for the Copilot that the company has. It can upload it there, and by creating again a good prompt with the context, with the input data, and with expected outcome, the expected format, then we can create, again, a very good risk assessment report and risk assessment matrix report that is needed for to show in the audits, to show to our auditors. So this is what is presented in the next slide, that we can use all this information, trusted data, and the GenAI, the technology, the co-pilot, to create such report. And the last use case is how the GenAI, the trusted data, and the expertise can be used to create the food fraud and vulnerability, food fraud and adulteration, vulnerability assessment. How we can justify that we are doing, as a company, as a food manufacturer, we have all the documented fraud vulnerability scoring. We have the evidence of monitoring the global fraud incidents and updates. How we can be ready for any at any point for such a audit, and how we can have a food fraud vulnerability assessment report which is structured, which documents the likelihood, the impact, the mitigation, and it has also a periodical update that is justified by the review dates. The process is exactly the same. We can get trusted data, high quality data about the fraud and adulteration issues for the materials that we are using in a facility. We can export this data from FOODAKAI. We are always suggesting to also expand the source of information. If we go to the next slide, to other sources like literature, like publications, so we can extract also very important information about potential adulterations from research studies and the publications. So this is something that can be very helpful to complement the analysis that the FOODAKAI provides based on the actual recalls and border rejections that we have for fraud and adulteration issues. And then again, in a very similar way, we can create the prompt and we can use the co-pilot to create the food fraud vulnerability assessment report in the same way as I always also mentioned in the previous use cases. So these are the use cases that we are working currently. This is how we help the companies to be audit ready. If you want to have an idea of the data that we are using, you can register for free. You can try for free our alerts, our weekly AI forecasts and daily alerts. So you can use this link to try it. Thank you so much so far for your attention, and I will pass to Professor Spink to hear more about the three masters approach.
Thank you, Giannis. Just very quickly before we move on to you, Professor, I think it's time we have a little poll. We had two prepared, but since we're a little bit ahead of time, I guess we can have this one, which is like connecting also to the topics that we discussed, and we're going to discuss in a little bit. So I'm going to launch this poll. So the main question here that we would like to get an answer from you is which of the following reports is hardest to prepare, update, and justify during an audit? So we can get a better idea from your side. Which report would you say is the hardest to prepare for? So we have 4 possible answers here, and you can also check all of the above as well, if all of them are considered equally hard, I guess. So let's give it a couple of seconds till we get some answers. Great. I think the main focus on the suppliers, like the supplier dossier report and the risk assessment, I would say, and some also said all of the above, but mainly on the supplier and the risk assessment part. Okay, thank you very much. That was interesting to see. So, with that being said, now that we got a better picture of what attendees think, I guess, Professor John, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So this is great to be a part. I mean, my brain is just whirling when it comes to AI. Fortunately, I'm at MSU, or we're a top 20 business school in the U.S., and I'm one of two people that's creating and developing. Actually, I'll put my timer on so I hit the time just fine. Applied AI for business course. First time we've taught a course like that, and is absolutely mind blowing. It's not even anywhere near close to what I feel. And I'm constantly figuring out what different ways to use the tools. They become very much tools, like a gardening tool. You get good at using the tool over time, or art, a paintbrush. And so I was listening to the presentation before, but the thing that got me was that idea of nonconformities, and I saw documentation as being a big one. And so while I was paying attention, I did go to ChatGPT and I asked it a couple questions. And I'm thinking, how do we deal with it? And this is a part of the masters: master of the tool, master of the data, master of the field or the discipline. I'll get to that in a second. So I thought, well, give me a 75-word summary, ChatGPT, of ideas of how ChatGPT can help companies respond to FDA food safety audits. Specifically, two of the top 10 nonconformities are written processes, procedures, or specifications. That's a great question. Why not ask that? You'd ask that of a consultant, ask that of AI, but there's a lot behind that we don't understand yet. So I thought deeper, a more general question I have is, can you help review how companies respond to FDA food safety audits, specifically those top 10 nonconformities? So it told me that. But even before that, what I'm really wondering and concerned about is I'm asking ChatGPT this. What's your percent confidence in your ability to address this question? So why not ask it if it thinks it can ask a question? And I said, also, what data sets or resources would you use? So at the very beginning, just to start down the process, that there's two of those top nonconformities. So in this time, while I was paying attention, I will confirm that, I looked it up. So I ran that and pressed print. So George, you may post that in the discussion. The thing is that this is a great starting point. We've got tremendous amount of tools. They're very dangerous if we don't know how to use them, but unbelievably powerful Superman along the way. So, yeah. So to start out for this is AI use disclosure. We should always ethical use starts with explaining if and how we used it. So saying we used it, yes, but also this idea of this risk disclosure statement of what with the information that we provide, what's the risk. Now, what I just created in that first chat, I'm just saying it's a quick overview. So that's responsible use. Next point. Is then we should disclose if, how, when we used it. And then next point there is human in the loop is what we've been talking about, is that it's not just we take AI and we act upon it. We get information. Just like this, while a tremendous amount of information showed up, and even asked ChatGPT, how would you deal with it differently? Or what are different questions? What haven't I considered? Then I'm driving it. I'm the director of it. It's just, I've got these other resources at my disposal. And now if I were to go about looking at dealing with nonconformities, I'd be that much farther ahead. So next slide. And key with all this, and even this example I just gave, I like doing that at the beginning to give you a running start. Oh, just as a side note. So I have a personal subscription to ChatGPT. With that, I have control of the data set. I have control of the projects. We had a department ChatGPT subscription, and then they didn't fund it anymore. I lost all the previous history that I had. Now I'm very clear about when I'm working on projects, for a company or something, it might be in their chat GPT, but I've got my own. I'm aware of what is sensitive and what's not. The key is with a subscription is that whatever I put in is not used to train the tool. It doesn't make it public. So I can put things in there that are sensitive. Now I've slowly worked my way into that. Didn't do it right away. I recommend for people, it's like these questions I just asked about food safety and FDA audits. That's not saying anything specific, anything proprietary. So get your own ChatGPT subscription, ask your own questions of things that you like, play with it. And that's the most important part to know what's possible. AI is a tool, not a replacement. They're not going to be sentient beings. It's support, just like I just asked it what could do. Pattern detection. Wow, it can look at every single Code of Federal Regulation document page that's in recorded history in about 5 seconds. You could look for I could look for my last name in every Code of Federal Regulations document ever. And that's pattern detection. You can look for things. And traceability. Maybe we can try to track things, look for anomalies. We're not going to get replaced by AI. We're going to get replaced by someone who's better at using AI than we are. And that's the way to look at it. And you're not going to be good at using it if you don't start using it. I've had some very senior people have said they did one ChatGPT search. There's no way that they can even conceive at all what's possible if they've not even dabbled with it for their own things in their own life. Call it your gardening or sports or whatever. So next slide, please. So the way that we look at it from a scholarly standpoint with the students is that it's this three masters approach. For you to be efficient, or like for me to ask those questions and feel confident moving forward on just starting to review FDA, is this whole idea again, the three masters approach. Master the tool. I thought for this question, ChatGPT would probably be the best of what the tools I have. I also have Claude, Perplexity, Notebook LM, Gamma, Gemini, Copilot. I thought ChatGPT would be very good for that first step. So let's master the tool. I know how to see, even when I ask it questions, is I didn't just ask it at the end. I ask it for some of those prep issues, like framing, master the resource. So I actually, it told me it had some access to FDA reports. That's a real key with things like this data set we're talking about today is you master the resource. You know what data's in there and what's not. And master the field or master the discipline. You're an expert in your audit compliance. And so you'd have to see if that output made sense for you. Food fraud prevention is my area. So I can look at some of the output and to see if that makes sense. And then we take that aspect of it and master the field, see if this output is giving it what we think it should or what it applies to us specifically. If it doesn't, maybe we need more data. And that was something ChatGPT popped up asking if there were different data sets it wanted me to refer to, like FDA recall notices or something. But also it's master the tool, that every time I do a search, I get more efficient at understanding what it can do. So again, you run it through, see if it meets your needs, and then go back through. And every time you do that, you get more refined with the tool. I ask generative AI, here's my question. How do you think I should approach it? What have I missed? What are other ways? What are best practices? I ask all this framing before I'd actually ask it to do anything. Next slide, please. So the benefits for us in food safety. To say enhanced data analysis is the understatement of the century. The ability to look at so much information, to ask it questions, whether you have the data set, it's operating within your company's firewall, and you can look at every food safety audit that's been digitized in all of the history of your company. That's phenomenal. Real-time monitoring. So yeah, I can check things. We set up AI agents for the class we teach. We set up AI agents that look at best practices in teaching the concept. The concept that's going to be, today is Thursday, the concept for Monday. We've already got the content made, but we have things go automatically look at it to update us. That's real-time monitoring. That's passive. All we have to do is respond. Decision support. So like again here, asking it questions about how should we go about answering the question, or if we then are moving forward to then figure out what are some options. Traceability, predictive insights, that's stuff that we've been talking about with the data today, is either traceability, being able to monitor product as it's moving, or predictions. Later, when we find incidents, we may find there's some underlying factor that it might be when Chelsea football soccer is playing, there's more fraud because who knows, maybe the Interpol monitors are all Chelsea fans. There's been some weird anomaly may come out. Next slide, please. So weaknesses. We have to constantly ask, what could go wrong? What did we miss? What's the weakness? What's the biggest opportunity? Things like that. So poor data quality, meaning that we don't have the data to answer the questions that we're addressing. And with that is then, I mean, again, to have this feedback loop to say, did we have the right information to answer this question? Now, if we don't have it, then it's good to know, and then we can possibly go get more information. False confidence, that would be that we get this output to say, here's the way to act, and it might not be really the way to act. Rare event limitations, that is a big deal. Food safety incidents seem like they occur a lot, but in reality, compared to people that slip and fall and get hurt, it's very low. So we have to be realistic about that, of those incidents. Well, I think also like the dark figure of crime. What did we catch? What didn't we catch? And AI hallucinations. It's not so much AI hallucinates and makes things up, but we ask it not inappropriate. That sounds like a loaded question. We ask it to do things we don't mean it to do. And so it takes the data that it has and tries to make logic of it. Most likely when it goes off the rails, it's because we asked it for something that sometimes you look back and say, oh, wait, I did ask it something weird in the question. I need to change my question. Or the data sets don't make sense, or it tries to do some type of logic. So that's a key to understand that. I guess the more I use AI, generative AI, the more I'm skeptical of it. And so the more I ask it, I double check my prompts and I double check the results. And once you put those feedback loops, we'll say plan, do, check, act, quality wheel. So there's a project, plan, do, check, act of the project, and there's a plan, do, check, act of the plan, do, check, act. And there's a plan, do, check, act of the process that we're using even behind that. And once you build that into this, if that does make sense, is that we're basically checking our work on the project. We're checking how we went about checking the project, and then we look at the big picture of other resources or tools, things that we can ask to just double check ourselves, things that we would never take the time or effort to do. We can now ask AI again, what have I missed? What might be the biggest weakness here? What might a specific person have as a criticism of the way that we operated this? Next question, next slide. And so the takeaways. Expert guidance is required. AI is a tool. It works for us. It's someone said it's a fifth grader that's read every book and report and data set in the history of all mankind, but never has worked a day in his life. So that's a key. We need this expert guidance. We're not going to get replaced by AI. We're going to get replaced by people that are better at using than us. We need real intelligence. Data quality is critical. You need to know what data you have in relation to what question you're asking, and to make sure that you've got enough information to list it. I'm right at my 12 minutes, so we're good here. Insight, not prediction. And that's at the very beginning. A lot of what we're doing is we're able to get insight because humans act in ways that are not predictable. AI ultimately is an algorithm predicting. If it's 1,000-word report, it's 1,000-word. The next word is predicted 1,000 times by a model. And that's a key. It's looking at history. And we find a lot of times when we're doing innovative reports and ask for a summary, it gets 80% of the real true insight there. So, but there's ways we can work with that. It's the insight, not prediction. So next slide. I think it's just references. Always good to explain how you used AI and the risks. Important to show the references and then discussion. So
yeah, thank you so much, Professor John. That was excellent. I mean, we're of course ahead of time, but definitely not fault. I mean, the content is very good, so I think there's a solid reason we go ahead of time. But before losing any more time, I think it's time to open the floor for a Q&A. So you can type your questions, as I said before. Oh, and there's already some of them in the chat. So without losing any more time, let me just get through them. So first question is, what is the advantage of using FOODAKAI data to create the reports that are requested by the auditors? I think that's a question for Giannis.
Yeah, so I can answer this, but Professor Spink also mentioned that many times, mentioned that many times that the data quality is very important. So what we have seen is that in many cases the report is not very good because the source of data was not very good, or it was some data that was not validated, not well unreached. So also the final report, either this is the hazard analysis report or the fraud and vulnerability assessment report, was of low quality. Because in FOODAKAI we are collecting and we are also reviewing. We have we have data experts and domain experts that are reviewing the result of the enrichment that is done by AI. Because we have this review, we can ensure that the quality is very high, and the quality for the final result of the AI is very critical. So that's why it's important to have FOODAKAI or any other platform that collects and validates and enriches the information about hazards, about fraud issues, adulteration issues in the global supply chain. It's good also to have the trends and some generic articles, but it's the most important is to have real issues that they have happened in the global supply chain and they were validated by the experts.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. It's interesting. So I teach Introduction to Supply Chain Management, and we just had a couple of our chapters on quality. And quality is ultimately is that the what you have is meeting the specification. And that's the thing is you look at the data sets and it's the best there is out there. And so it is high quality because it is meeting its goal. Now the question gets to be is for your specific question, maybe you do need a little bit more information, but that's the process that we're going through. And so you really need to start with, again, the middle of the master the tool is master the resource. You have to have a wide range of information there. And then the more different types of information like this, the incidents that you're talking about, is that we have a lot more insight and we can go deeper to understand why it occurred, how it occurred. So that's definitely the key is you've got to have the right information or just some really good general information to start understanding the problem. And then generative AI is really just an extension of automation from the past. I remember the first time you had Excel and it could add up a column. Is that AI? Well, no, that's just automation. And we're just kind of automation to the nth degree. And there'll be more. I mean, our courses apply to AI for business, but we have a feedback loop constantly to look at what's next, what's new, what's possible. Maybe ChatGPT it's on ChatGPT 5. Maybe ChatGPT 6.0 does something completely different. We need to adjust to that. And I think another key point here is that the feedback loop. So I said, you're doing the project, then plan, do, check, act, you're reviewing how you did the project. And then you have to have another feedback loop, a plan, do, check, act of how you did your check on the project. So we ask like the question I put in the prompt or that was posted is, ask ChatGPT how to deal with these things. I then asked it how it was going to deal with it. That's one level deeper. And then if that project is developed, I would further refine the prompt to have it check itself along the way. And then later, let's say that a company used this to create their written processes, and then they go and get feedback from an auditor or an inspector or consultant or boss or whoever, feed that back in. Because if they all said, well, it was all in blue font and you want it all in red, then you add that in. And that's something that we're doing more, even to have AI help the machine. That's machine learning. So I asked it for, I was doing a report. And so there was a rubric, there's things like that. So I actually wrote the report, had AI help, and I asked AI to judge it against the rubric. And it said, oh, you're at 7 out of 10. And I said, well, God, that was silly. Why don't I just say, write the report so it meets 10 out of 10 on the rubric? Boom, it did. But that was from one generative AI tool. I then that was in ChatGPT. I then put it in Claude and said, compare this document with the rubric. What do you think? Well, it was 9.5 out of 10. And I thought, ooh, what did I miss? And I did that with a couple of generative AI. And so you can start to do that. Then also when I edited the document, so let's say you do write up your written processes. That was your audit nonconformity. Write up the processes, and then you edit it. Well, I just thought, why don't I just put it back into Claude and said, hey, here's the edits I made. Does this help you? And it said, yes. I now realize you like to refer to this or that, or it's the plant. The plants have names, not the cities, and so that it got more and more refined. So when you do this and have your own subscriptions to it and run through it, it gets better and better and more refined. And again, the key there is that if you do then use this to support writing the processes, and you get feedback of something that should change, put that back into the system to ask to say, here's what I needed to change. And then the machine learning will help to adjust that. I don't know if that was sounded like gibberish to people or not, but the thing for me is that it's got to be more and more efficient as I started just dabbling with it. And it's okay to dabble, play, and tinker is what we say. Dabble, play, and tinker. And you'll get more familiar, and it gets to be so powerful.
That was a great point, actually, and it basically answered another question that was asked about how much can we trust the content of the reports that are created by a generative AI tool, and if we need to review them. And I think the point you made that you double check between different platforms and all the content that's being created to review it by yourself as well, because it's definitely something that is made to support the
Yeah,
info
and so
that.
and that's the three masters there. So if you have been if you've worked for 20 years in food safety quality and you've had these audits, then you have a lot of mastery of the field. You could ask it to do something. You say, no, that's not right, because you have all that expertise. We're dealing with college students, undergraduates. We're explaining to them, well, we have a way for them to, it's actually a different prompt tool to say, how much of an expert am I in this topic? And if you are a novice, you ask and use ChatGPT in a different way than if you're an expert. And if you are a novice and you are, then you can ask it, compare this to blah, 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 because you know that you're not good at making that reference.
That was very interesting. I think we unfortunately don't have more time to open up to more questions, but we can definitely follow up by email. So close up this amazing session. I mean, I wanted to say a huge thank you to both of our speakers, of course, to you, Professor John Spink and Giannis, and for everyone who joined us. And if we had a very, very short comment of what are you keeping as the most important takeaway for the audience from this discussion, what would it be? Professor John?
Well, really from AI, we need to have groups of people to talk. We need to talk together because we're going to learn from each other. It's going to help us frame the questions. It's going to help us review the output, and we need to have these type of groups. Whether we call them hives or pods or something, we need to have these groups to get together.
Thank you. Giannis?
And I will keep the criticality and the master of tools that we need to compare the tools. We need to understand the tools. We need to understand the technology in order to achieve more in terms of automation, in order to achieve more in terms of efficiency. So I will keep the criticality with which we need to see all these things and to try and to improve the input, which includes also the data that we need to add.
Great.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to your speakers, and thank you for joining us. As promised, we're going to share the recording and any materials that we showed to today, the session. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.